it now makes ICE the biggest law enforcement agency in the country, bigger than DEA, bigger than the FBI, bigger than
ICE's budget is now bigger than the United States Marine Corps.
Yes,
That is
sir.
crazy.
I heard, boys, that it's like it would be the fourth or fifth largest military in the world. That the ICE military, the ICE folks, would be bigger than the army, the entire army, Mike, of Israel.
Yeah.
Yes. And then on top of that, they're going to have signing bonuses for ICE agents. And again, the point, I mean, now they actually have to spend this money. And, when you have an incentive to spend money, you're going to spend money on a bunch of boondoggles, which is how you get, Humvees in MacArthur Park.
And there's a whole bunch of Donald Trump donors who own private prisons and going to be building lots of shit, not other places, not only in the Everglades.
There's so much money in this budget. Yes. And in order to build a true law enforcement unit, like you can't just put out ads and you hire it and we're done by September. This takes many years to build up. What they're going to do, guys, they're going to start contracting with militia members and Proud Boys and all the extremists who are like these weekend cowboys that want to go get Mexicans and hunt people down and return them back to the border and save America. Those dudes are going to be on the payroll. They're going to be getting bounties.
Yes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast. It's so good to be back. Mike Madrid, look at the shirt I bought myself in Mexico.
I hope all of you are watching this on YouTube because this is a spectacle. Chuck Rocha has outdone himself.
You know what's better than one cock? Two cocks. That's right, baby. Two big old roosters. I think in Mexico they call them the gallos. Did I say that right?
Gallos. Yeah, see, ándale. How was Mexico? How was the fishing? How'd you do?
Oh, my God. It was off the chain. This is my third time to this one little place. And Eric, before we get to you, I want you to know it was down a dirt road. If you fly into Cancun, first off, let me stop. You can fly directly now into the nicest fucking military airport you've ever seen in Tulum, Mexico. You can go straight to Tulum now. I connected in Miami, direct flight to Tulum. Our good buddy Rick Torres in LA, he came direct from LA. Other boys came in from New York. 10 boys down to Tulum, where we then drove 2 hours to the nearest bridge south of Tulum, got on a boat, and then did another hour and a half into the mangrove rainforest, into this little place called Punta Allen, Mexico, where we were fishing out on the flats, trying to catch the elusive permit. We caught a bunch of those. I'll get to it later, but it was really good, off the grid. Did I miss anything?
We were just surprised that you were allowed back in the country. I had a bet going with some odds. And I was thinking, maybe they let them in, maybe they don't. I don't know. It's like a coin toss. But you're in, you're back. I think it was probably the accent that brought you in and convinced everybody that this guy just got a really good tan. He's fine. He's safe. He's gonna make it okay.
He sounds like one of us, but he looks like one of them. What do you think, Hank?
I think that's the dilemma of the country at this moment. Let me introduce our guest because I'm.
Oh my God! What a big day! You do it, Mike.
Yeah, I'm excited to have our guest today. We've needed to have him on the show for a while. If you don't know Eric Garcia and you aren't following him on Twitter, you need to be, because this is he's a very different reporter. This is a guy who approaches stories differently than everybody else, and as a political consultant, I love it because he's looking at the chessboard very, very differently. And this guy can read crosstabs better than most political consultants. And he's also has this remarkable ability to go back into history and understand the dynamics of races in very specific parts of the country and can make these comparisons that are absolutely perfect. And I before I got really old, Chuck, and I had a good, strong memory and a good, strong mind, I could kind of do that a little bit. But so it's nice to see somebody who'd be like, oh, yeah, that was like the Evan Bayh race back in '86 in Indiana and the northeastern part of the state really did. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? But it's great to have a reporter with those kind of reflexive skills. Anyway, Eric Garcia from The Independent, thanks for making the time. We were hoping to have you last week, but you got caught up with the big, beautiful budget bill, which we want to talk to you about because you were one of the few reporters around the clock watching that thing. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be on.
Talk to us a little bit about that night, that process of going through everything, because you left at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and then you're at home, and then you got called back, and you raced back to the Hill.
Yeah, so it was like at around 2 in the morning, and what had happened was they decided to keep the rule. You guys know this because you're Capitol Hill nerd. They decided to have the rule to set up the debate for the vote on the House side. And then what happened was a lot of conservatives had kind of a hissy fit. They were going to vote no. They kept it open for a while. And what was interesting is we'll talk about this later with David Valadeo, who represents a majority Hispanic district, where 64% of his constituents are on Medicaid.
Yeah.
He was holding out on it. And then what happened is that at some point and this always happens, I say, look, to hell with this. I'm going home. I need a change of clothes. I need a shower. I need to shave. And then what happened
is 2 in the morning, right?
Around 2 in the morning. And then what happens is Johnson says they have the vote. And I just say, you know what? I've got enough for my pre-write. I'm just going to finish on my pre-write, but I'm going to be watching it from home. And then I regret not doing it because I regret not going back because I should have, because that's when Jeffries did his little magic minute thing, where the party leaders could basically speak as long as they wanted. It's only counted as a minute against their time. So but yeah, I mean, it was so fascinating seeing how once again the very, very thin majority in the House almost lends itself to everybody folding and falling in line with Trump. Because if they had like maybe 10 more seats, they could probably get some, they could probably say, especially if you know this as a party leader, you could say, hey, you know what? You got to do what's best for your district. Vote no, you're okay. You'll be fine. But because there's such thin margins, because House Speaker Mike Johnson is moving with such small numbers, he really needs everybody on board. And the point that I've joked about it, I postulated this question yesterday on social media. It's like, is Mike Johnson a good speaker, or does he just know when to call dad? So,
right, yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, I wasn't surprised that it was going to get through. I was surprised that it took that long, and I'm surprised that they got literally all but 2 members. And I was
were there any concessions actually made?
So this is the difficult thing that we don't know. So Representative Ralph Norman from the Freedom Caucus, or as my colleague John Bowden likes to call them, the House Fealty Caucus, he said, I don't like that we didn't get to unwind the IRA, or the wind and solar tax credits, or the electric vehicle tax credits. But, we got some promise from the White House. Earlier this week, the White House put out a thing saying that the Treasury Department's going to directly police the wind and energy tax credits. But again, it's an executive order and it could be repealed easily. We know that Trump changes his mind every other day. So, yeah, I mean, and the real surprising one wasn't the House vote. It was the Senate vote. It was so fascinating because, like, if you're in the Senate gallery, there's this back part on the Republican side. And at one point, you had Lisa Murkowski in the back of the room being cornered by Mitch McConnell, John Thune, Dan Sullivan, and Mike Crapo. And she's just like, and then there were times where she would go back to John Thune's office, and it was kind of like mom and dad fighting.
Yeah.
As the child of divorce, I'm very familiar with that. But like, and then they say, everything's fine. And you're just like, no, you guys are going to get divorced soon. This is the big irony. As much as the Yahoos in the Freedom Caucus make a lot of noise, they don't get that many concessions. Moderate rhino Lisa Murkowski got a whole lot of concessions for that thing.
Chuck, what are you thinking about this? I know your brain's a little bit foggy coming back from the mangrove swamps, but were you following this whole thing?
It was called Salt Encrusted. I actually did a live Substack from the Tulum fishing village, but it was more around the alligator Alcatraz we can get to. And Mike, I did listen to your special 4th of July special last week. I'm still mopping up the tears around my desk from that special you did without me. Gloom and doom, but I loved it. It was really good. It was very informative. I love giving you shit, but it was good. What I think about it is that kind of, you touched on it. in your solo episode last week of like who we are. I regurgitate this just so you know I really do listen. Is that, you know, when you were saying when people say this ain't who we are, and you're like, well, maybe fuck we are. This is who we are. And I thought when you said that, I was like, you know, maybe I think Mike's on to something because this bill is a reflection of actually who we are. If you don't like the way things are going, you got to vote somebody that's going to vote for the things that are good for you. And a lot of rich people voted in a lot of folks. And this is good for rich people. I mean, really good. And so, like, if you're working stiff, and the ironic thing that I know Eric probably wants to jump in on is a lot of working stiffs and a lot of working Latinos that voted for Donald Trump and Republicans are getting their ass fucking handed to them in this bill. Right, Eric?
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're getting their ass handed to them. I think the big one to me that was so interesting was that it included the no tax on tips. And that was clearly an overture to Trump winning over. That was basically how he won Nevada. He first talked about no tax on tips when he was just outside of Las Vegas. But the thing of it is that there's an income cap, and that unlike I think it's there's a deductibility cap, I think, of $25,000, and it expires in 2028. Whereas the tax cuts, the 2017 tax cuts, they're made permanent. So the ones for the working stiffs, the waiters and the waitresses who voted for Donald Trump, in Miami and Las Vegas and Philadelphia, there's a certain level and a cap of how much they can deduct from their tips. But the rich folks are the ones who are going to be who are going to benefit the most from it. And then on top of that, we know that the group that is least likely to have health insurance are Latinos. They are more likely to be on Medicaid, or if you're in California, it's Medi-Cal, depending on where you live. But again, it is this is one of those things that, again, if you're working class, and again, this is the point that I keep on making and keep on pointing on social media. The majority of people on Medicaid already work, including a lot of Latinos who already work. It's just that a lot of them, their employers keep their hours low so they can't get benefits.
Right. And yeah, and market it that way. Like, keep your money lower so you can get these added benefits from the government. While Chuck was out fishing, enjoying himself, I was, of course, working, and I decided to fly out to Miami.
Bullshit. He never worked.
I went to CPAC Latino, the first Latino CPAC in Miami. And I got let me spend a little bit of time on this, because this is the first time I'd ever seen Miami behaving like Los Angeles. Like, yes. Cubans and Mexicans are starting to act the same way. Like, that's how bad it's gotten in the country. Right? Jesus. Yeah. And so I'm out there, and there's this CPAC Latino was a weird kind of thing in and of itself. I don't want to jump too deep into that, other than to say there was this massive disconnect between what used to look like the old Latino Chambers of Commerce meetings. These are successful business entrepreneurs. This was not the MAGA, sequin dress wearing clown show that is CPAC. So there's this massive disconnect between the grassroots people and this successful entrepreneurial class in Miami. But the next day, I go to this press conference where there's this protest in front of the FIFA regional buildings trying to pressure FIFA soccer into doing what the Dodgers did, which is basically commit to not allowing ICE into these games and stadiums, and start giving money to some of the advocacy organizations to fight to protect for your fan base.
Yeah.
Very reasonable. But what was shocking to me was it was palpable in Miami, where Cubans are freaked out. Like, Venezuelans are freaked out. They're like, they're ripping our families apart. It's like, yeah, you voted 75% for this dude, and he was telling you he's going to do it. And you Cubans have always been the exception, but there's no exceptions with this guy anymore.
Yeah, particularly with Stephen Miller. Yeah.
Particularly with Stephen Miller. And Congresswoman Salazar was there, and she introduces this novel bill, which is basically a Bracero program, right? It's this work permit structure. So I wanted to bounce this off, because I got a couple of questions. The first is, what's the feeling on the Hill with some of these members, these Republican Cubans? First, is there a change? And second, and you're going to hear this first, and everyone's going to think Mike Madrid's completely full of shit, but I think I will be vindicated over the course of the next 18 months. What are the chances that Donald Trump does comprehensive immigration reform?
Oh, that is a really good thing. That you open up a can of worms, but I'm gonna give you half a dub. So it was funny, because the day that like I want to say like the week before the debate began on the OBBB, I ran into Monica de la Cruz. And for those who don't know, she represents a district in the Rio Grande Valley. A lot of farm workers, a lot of folks there who are undocumented and who literally, it's not even a matter of, Chuck, you know this living in Texas. It does, like most people don't ask you in Texas, like especially in those areas, like, are you undocumented? Are you undocumented? It's just like people, you just go back and forth. It doesn't even make much of a difference. But she was like, well, President Trump listened to us. She was really trying to say that, like, you know, Trump listened to us. We're going to do this. You know, we're going to get exceptions for employers, because what's the big thing to know about a place like Texas is it's the biggest Republican state that doesn't have E-Verify.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I know, right? But guess what? It's because the business community doesn't want
it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce Republicans,
of course.
The Bush, you know, John Cornyn Republicans don't want that. But to your point, I think that a lot of Latinos, especially like people like you said, Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar or Carlos Jimenez, or Tony Gonzalez, who represents Bexar County in Texas, they know that this is politically toxic. They understand that this is a way of screwing over the very people who they worked their tails off to get to vote for Trump. And now they are kind of they're in this double bind where simultaneously a lot of their constituents are on Medicaid, the ones who are citizens, and then the ones who aren't are the people who live and work in their districts are at risk of being deported or being or at risk of being, you know, rounded up by ICE. And I think it creates this tension. I'm gonna say this to you: if you're vindicated, you're probably vindicated. The way I see it is, if Democrats take back the House of Representatives, the majority, and I think the way that you could see it is if Stephen Miller and Tom Homan leave the administration, which, you know, it could happen after a midterm. Typically, midterms, we see a lot of turnover.
There's a big washout.
Yeah, there's big washout. I remember famously in 2006, Bush fired Donald Rumsfeld and put in Bob Gates. There typically is a lot of turnover. And then I could very easily see, even if it's just like stuff for people who've been here long term, you know, again, something similar to Salazar's bill, just like a worker program, and then like farm worker visas. I could see maybe like a hodgepodge of things. And again, it would really depend on the makeup in the Senate. Like if Democrats pick up like 2 seats in like a state like North Carolina, or if they somehow knock off Susan Collins. I got a piece coming out about Susan Collins coming out later this week. Then it's possible. But again, it really depends. The House would be down for it. It would be really if the Senate is down for it.
The Republicans know what they've done in the House. That's why they're talking about mid-year redistricting in Texas and in Ohio, because they know that they're fucked. And let me use a little lighter language for the kids. They're really fucked. And I mean that when you look at this bill and what we're going to say in campaigns, sure, they're already running ads about the tips, and you're right about the tips. The same thing with the overtime. There's a cap on individual overtime at 12 and a half for an individual, like 30,000 for a family. And all of this expires in a couple of years, which is, again, I give them credit. It's brilliant if you're trying to sell a shit sandwich to somebody and telling them that it's filet mignon. You're like, look, I'm going to give you a little taste of the sugar. I'm going to sound like my old Uncle Steve. I'm going to give you a little sugar so you don't realize that you're eating a shit sandwich. But you just taste a little of that sugar up front. That's what I'm getting at here. But the whole thing was no good because, as you said, tax break for rich folks go on forever. So there's not a doubt in my mind. There's not a doubt in any Republican in this city's mind that it's going to be tough, really tough to hold the House. Could it happen? Yeah, because I said Donald Trump could be president, so anything could happen. But when you look at what they're doing and then the real impact, then you salt in what you and Mike Eric are talking about, which is police in the street, building a detention center in the middle of a swamp. You see what's going on in districts like Texas 23, Texas 15, California 22. Then you start seeing the map come together in your head. And then this was reported out yesterday in the Senate. The Senate's having a really good year of recruiting folks in places like Nebraska, where that independent's coming back to run as an independent.
Osborne,
Colin Allred has announced he's coming back. He earned $30 million. It's going to be a much different year in Texas. The year after, Mike Madrid talks about this a lot. The year after Donald Trump gets elected was the best we'd ever done with Latinos in the last 15 years. That's coming up. So you're looking at that. The senator in North Carolina just said because of this bill, he's not going to seek re-election. And
I've known Tom Tillis for a decade. We could talk about Tom Tillis.
And Roy Cooper, who is a very popular governor, is going to run. It was all said by the attorney general this week. So you start seeing all these things falling into place, and not just one thing makes all the news of the day, even though this morning it broke that one Ruben Gallegos going to Iowa and August.
I saw that.
We'll talk about that later.
Bag. Yeah. I want to get out there and see that. Yeah.
A lot of good stuff going on.
Tell us about, with all that, I didn't mean to interrupt, Chuck.
No,
that's
please.
Perfect setup. But you and I don't want to jump ahead of your story, Eric. But the one that's sitting out there, the obvious one, the one that's sitting on a tee is Susan Collins in Maine.
Yes.
So talk to us about Maine. How are the Democrats doing with
this? Don't come out, Eric, until Friday. Give us all the tea.
Yeah, I'll give you all the tea and all the lobster as well. But like the point that I think with in Maine is that with Susan Collins, she actually now has a lower approval rating. I think a lot of Democrats right now are spooked because if you remember in 2020, everybody said she's to borrow from Chuck, she's fucked. She's royally screwed. She's going to lose. She voted to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. She's fallen in line with Trump. Then she won by 9 points in a state that Joe Biden won by around 8 or 9 points. So she overperformed. This time it's a little different because a lot of conservatives are still mad at her for voting to convict Trump after January 6th. And then on top of that, a lot of Democrats are really mad at her for voting in line with Trump. She voted against the OBBB because of the cap on provider taxes, and because, look, Maine is a very rural state and has a lot of rural hospitals. She voted to raise the cap for, she got a little bit of a little taste of sugar, as Chuck would say, on raising the amount from 25 billion for rural hospitals to 50 billion. But anybody who knows about rural hospitals and knows how tight of a profit margin they live on, that should go away in a few years. The real question is, though, because a lot of Democrats are really kind of traumatized after 2020, I talked to Jordan Woods, one of the candidates who's running, who was a former chief of staff on the Capitol Hill. But as of right now, it's really hinging on whether the governor runs Jared Golden said he's not going to run. He's running for re-election in his district, which was the district Trump won. But yeah, it really does hinge. If Democrats are going to have any hope, they got to win in a state like Maine. The one thing Dems have going for them now is that Susan Collins' approval rating is going down.
Yeah.
A lot of she's the last New England Republican senator. And a lot of people are like, well, what are we getting out of her? The one thing she has going for her is she's appropriations chairwoman. And anybody who knows anything about appropriations knows you can bring back a shit ton of projects back to your state: bridges, roads, rural hospitals, money for universities, just by being the chairperson of appropriations.
It's not going to be good to be an incumbent this year in either party. I will promise you that. I think that's the biggest difference.
I know. I've been saying this, and Mike knows I've been saying this, that I think that there's a chance for a Dem Tea Party in the coming weeks and months. I could very easily see a few older Democrats. I think especially after the whole Joe Biden stuff, I think you're going to see a lot of older Democrats being shown the door after this.
How solid is Hakeem Jeffries?
That's a real big question because of the fact that a lot of DSA endorsed Democrats have won in his backyard. In assembly districts and in city council districts. Now, of course, that's very different from a congressional one, and he is the minority leader. But we saw it in 2014 with Eric Cantor when he was getting ready to become majority leader. When he was majority leader,
yeah,
and he lost because he just didn't go back to his district.
It wasn't close. That race was not close.
It was not close. Now, a lot of people blamed his support for immigration reform. That's not really true because it was just more that he lived in the suburbs of Virginia. He just never went back to his home district. Jeffries does go back to his district. The question is whether he's in touch with the district and whether he's in touch with a lot of people in there. And then also he does have a massive war chest. He's not a fundraiser on the level Nancy Pelosi is, but nobody's on the level.
I'm not talking about him winning re-election. How is he, Eric, because you're a creature of the Hill, in the majority as majority leader?
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, minority leader. I think as of right now, thanks for clarifying. I think as of right now, he hasn't had to do a lot of tough whipping. Look, okay, congratulations, you got unanimous to vote for you for minority for speaker earlier this year. Hooray! But if you remember, he had a lot of defections on the Lake and Riley Act earlier this year when they had been actively whipping against that bill. He had a lot of he had some defections when it came to the censorship of Congressman Al Green, and and I think that as of right now, but again, it's all pretty undetermined right now because of the fact that he hasn't had to actually whip on hard votes where it's margin to margin. Every Democrat voted against the OBBB. Every Democrat, all but one Democrat voted on against the CR back in March in the House. It was really the Senate that screwed him over. It was really Chuck Schumer that screwed him over.
The opposition right now this is the easy part, though. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Being in the minority is easy.
Being in the minority is easy. You don't have to whip a whole lot of people to be against Donald Trump and this agenda, but they're not fucking doing it. It's like, where's the fight? Like, that's what people want, right? The Democrats right now are like, use your claws, scratch his fucking eyes out, kick him in the nuts. And they're like, let's just take our time here. Let's think about this a little bit.
I think that was why he did his magic minute, honestly, is that he did it so that it would be in prime time. He did it so that the vote would be at noon instead of at the dead of night, in the wee hours of the morning. And that was as much for Democratic primary voters.
Explain that a little bit explain that for people who didn't listen or didn't catch it, and then also what you think the fallout may or be.
Yeah. So he basically spoke for more than 8 hours on the floor of the House just to shame the House Republicans. Mostly he was just talking about Medicaid, but then I think that it was really a lot of Democratic voters, as you're right, they want to see even, the establishment, older Black voters who are the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, they're getting fed up now. Just this week, Gavin Newsom was in South Carolina, of all places, campaigning, kind of doing a soft launch of his campaign. And I think that what you're seeing is that Jeffrey's doing that was him messaging to the base that we're ready to do this, that we want to do this, that we're trying to fight back. It was funny during the whole CR fight. He was saying what more do you want us to do? We're voting against everything. We're doing all this, but voting is very different from a lot of people don't see the votes. They want to see posturing. Yeah. I think this was him wanting to see posturing. And look, let's be real. Zohran Mamdani won his legislative district in the New York mayor's race. And he has yet to endorse Mamdani. So I think that he's also has to be aware, and so does Chuck Schumer, who lives in Brooklyn, by the way, that, the tide is changing on the Democratic side in their own backyard.
There will be Democratic members of Congress in safe districts losing primaries this year. I mark your word. I'm not saying I'm endorsing that. I'm not saying it's good or a bad idea. I got to protect my work, but I'm just telling you it's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of folks that pop up. I thought it was ironic talking about that DSA shit that the old boy that beat Bowman,
yes.
that congressman, Mike, you may not know this, but he got tired of the shit in D.C. of waiting to vote on the bill and just packed his shit up and drove back to D.C. and didn't even get the vote. The only Democrat not to vote.
Yes, exactly. George Latimer. Yes. Yes, sir.
He piled up in his car and he's like, I'm going home. Y'all can handle this.
I'm going home to Westchester. Yeah.
So my next question for you, Eric, for folks here is I think we all have I don't know the fancy Georgetown word about how long you got to look at something over something for, we beat this horse to death, but tell me about what we should look at moving into August. I know that there is another debt ceiling. Do you think that there's any chance there's a government shutdown? And what do you see on the I sound like such a reporter now. Tell me what's on the legislative calendar, Eric, as we move into the fall.
Yeah, you sound like a gringo, man. But
I am half gringo, but you go ahead.
Yeah. But the point, good question. So August, now you have Mike Johnson talking about another reconciliation bill. I'm very skeptical about that because of the fact that this was so painful to do, and this is all the stuff they could agree on. You have August is when these guys are going to have to go back to their districts and explain themselves. They're going to have to go, they're going to be going to parades, and they're going to be going to ice cream socials, and they're going to be going back, back to school events. And that's when they're going to really, really, really hear how people feel about the cuts, particularly to Medicaid because the SNAP. And I think that's really what's going to come on. Then again, you have the point about like people want to see Democrats kick Republicans in the nuts. In September, the government runs out of money. Now, of course, we remember last time this happened, Chuck Schumer decided to vote for the continuing resolution, and 9 other Democrats joined the Republicans on that, and that was how the government stayed open. I think that this time you're going to see a lot more Senate Democrats say hell no and use their leverage to try to roll back some of these cuts, particularly maybe some of the I think what's also going to be really, really, really interesting is, for those who don't know, the bill now makes ICE one of the I think the biggest law enforcement agency in the country.
Yeah.
You should say that again.
Yes, it's good. It now makes ICE the biggest law enforcement agency in the country, bigger than DEA, bigger than the FBI, bigger than
ICE's budget. ICE's budget is now bigger than the United States Marine Corps.
Yes,
that's crazy.
I heard, boys, that it's like it would be the 4th or 5th largest military in the world. That the ICE military, the ICE folks, would be bigger than the army, the entire army, Mike, of Israel.
Yeah.
Yes. Basically, you now have, and then on top of that, they're going to have signing bonuses for ICE agents. And again, the point, now they actually have to spend this money. And, when you have an incentive to spend money, you're going to spend money on a bunch of boondoggles, which is how you get, Humvees in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles.
And there's a whole bunch of Donald Trump donors who own private prisons and going to be building lots of shit, not other places, not only in the Everglades.
Let me explain one other quick thing, too. I don't mean to interrupt, Eric, but I'm going to interrupt real quick. There's so much money in this budget. Yes. And in order to build a true law enforcement unit, like you can't just put out ads and you hire it and we're done by September. This takes many years to build up.
Yes, correct.
What they're going to do, guys, they're going to start contracting with militia members and Proud Boys and all the extremists who are like these weekend cowboys that want to go get Mexicans and hunt people down and return them back to the border and save America. Those dudes are going to be on the payroll. They're going to be getting bounties by just letting these people loose all over the freaking country to play cowboy, probably armed. Who the hell knows? There's going to be violence because these people are like mall cops who now are going to be empowered and have their masks on and their cool weekend camouflage uniforms hunting Mexicans that en masse by the thousands.
Mike is not being hysterical when you have this. And again, they're talking about 20 million deportations. You can't get 20 million deportations in 4 years. You just can't. What they're going to do is they're going to do, to borrow a phrase from the 2000s, they're going to do a lot of shock and awe. You're going to have, you mentioned the 3%ers and the Proud Boys and all those folks. Probably a lot of folks who got pardoned on for their actions on January 6th.
Yeah.
You're going to see groups like Core Civic and the Geo Group make a lot of friggin' money off of this. And what you're basically going to have is Los Angeles is going to be a preview for what you're going to see in cities like Chicago, New York City, Washington, D.C., Boston, Massachusetts. You're going to kind of see these kind of roving groups. And you're basically going to have, when you have that much money, you have an incentive to spend it.
Yeah.
And you have an incentive to spend a lot of stuff. And basically you are going to not to be hysterical, and people think I'm being hysterical, you're going to have essentially occupying armies in the major American cities.
That's the goal. That's exactly right. Quick question. If the Democrats get the House, and I expect they will, can they cut this funding right back?
They can. The difference, from what I understand, is that they changed it from discretionary spending to mandatory spending, if I remember correctly. So that's, for those who don't know, that is a very, very important distinction, because Mandatory spending, I mean, discretionary spending, you have to set it aside every year. Mandatory is just automatic. So they would need to not only change, defund it, remove the money. You could, maybe move the money to USAID if we have a USAID in 5 years. But it would also be about changing the letter of the law to changing it so that this is not just mandatory spending, it's discretionary spending where Congress just has, and the House has a lot more oversight of that money.
Can we come to an agreement on this podcast so we can stop using cowboy as a derogatory term, Mike Madrid?
Sorry. Yeah.
And if you see here, I wrote down derogatory so that I wouldn't forget how to say derogatory. And the second thing is we can call them militias, playing militia, not playing cowboy. They're playing militia because they ain't really never. Anyway, that whole thing makes me mad, so I'm not going to talk about it because I will cuss. Thinking about what you're talking about, Eric, and thinking about where we go as, we're getting close to the end of this podcast here, the next 10 minutes here. The thing on Capitol Hill that's going to affect Latinos the most, this is the Latino Vote podcast bringing us back home, is the direct impact on real people's lives. Now, I think this ICE budget is one of those where they're going to literally rain terror in communities like they're doing now. There's only so many bad people you can go get. And then you start showing up at Home Depots and nurseries and places where they're doing it now. That's going to expand. They're going to continue to build this wall. They're going to do all this shit where they can posture as malicious tough guys. And then that coupled with the people that are going to lose Medicaid, who are working people, who are a lot of my friends who work every day, but are so poor still working that they qualify. Able-bodied people who may be working off the books, but will show not working, and they're going to lose their health care. So when you have a militarized city that's specifically terrorizing Latino communities, then you're taking those communities off of health care. And even to Mike's point, in a place like Miami, where you're fucking with Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, and others because of temporary status that we were given, and now you have jerked back. I think all of this couples with an opportunity. Now, we can still mess this up. A Democrat can mess up a one-car parade. But it gives us the opportunity to have an alternative voice to say, hey, we are not about this. We are not about what's happening in your community. And this is what we are focused on, which is getting you more money, getting you health care, getting you better schools, giving you opportunity to succeed, right? So I think that's watching the narrative that goes into the midterms is going to be really big. Back to Jeffries. What Jeffries does control is the largest budget to win back these seats in two apparatuses, one being the DCCC and one being House Majority PAC. Between the two of those, they will spend $500 million in about 40 districts, and they will be the reason. And when you start watching their ads showing up a little differently, I think is when we'll know, is this going to be a 20-seat pickup, or is this going to be a 5-seat pickup, or, as Mike Madrid has said on this podcast, the opportunity to pick up 40 if the things really go south. Yeah. What are you hearing, Eric?
So I'm hearing that they're planning. They're now going into reach districts. They're going into Ana Paulina Luna's district in Florida 13. They're going into they're now going into Monica de la Cruz's district. That was seen as something that was off the board for a bit. Again, they're going to take another stab at going after Valadao, and they have every right to go after Valadao after his vote on Medicaid. So it would not surprise me if this bill is less popular than Trump now. And if you see, it was funny, one Democratic political consultant pointed this out to me, and it stuck with me many, many years ago, back in 2014, said that Latinos don't think about immigration day to day, but when they are targeted and when they are focused on it, that's when they really start to think about it. And then on top of that, we know that healthcare and education are the two big, healthcare, the economy, and education. These are the three things that Latino voters care about day in and day out. This is why Bernie Sanders did so well with them. This is why George Bush did so well with them. This is why, look at you, Chuck. And this is why Barack Obama did so well with them. And this is why Trump did so well with them. If they are not able to get a fistful of bucks, and on top of that, look, one of the other things that Mike pointed this out in an article in The Atlantic is that Trump's approval among Latinos started to go sideways, not because of immigration, but because of tariffs. Because guess who works in the port of Los Angeles, everybody? It's all those big Mexicans who are lifting things off the ships. And, you're going to see Latinos feel the pinch more than anything. And also, this is the other point that I know this is the Latino vote, but the other thing to really, really, really keep in mind this coming election is the Latina vote, because Latinas shifted more than Latinos in the past 12 years in elections. But if Latinas who are more likely to not be able to afford childcare, if they were the ones who got hit hardest during COVID, because they not only they lost service industry jobs, but they also had to get their kids on school over Zoom. If they are simultaneously paying more at the grocery store because women overwhelmingly handle the finances in their families, if they're they're also the ones to vote more on things like healthcare and education. And if they are the ones seeing their loved ones being rounded up by ICE or CBP, there is a real ripeness for the Latina vote, not just the Latino vote, but the Latina vote on this as well.
And I think a lot of people forget, and Chuck alluded to it, but you're going to hear me talk about this a lot in the next year, because while the narrative, rightfully so, and I was talking about it, beating the drum on Latinos being an economic pocketbook voter.
Yes.
It's not an either or consideration, and it never has been. Our community has rallied. We did in 1994. It's how it began. We did in 2018. The highest Latino turnout in midterm history, decidedly anti-Republican, helped give Nancy Pelosi the speaker's gavel. The storm clouds are starting to brew in exactly that same way. Like I said, I've never seen Miami and LA on the same weekend behaving the exact same way. That's a sign that something is brewing, something significant is coming. Okay. But I also want people to remember on this podcast, the idea that it's either or is the mistake that partisans make. Because after the 2018 midterms, you've heard me again for 3 years on this podcast saying 4 out of the last 5 elections, Latinos have been moving to the right. Pay attention. The one of the 5 was the 2018 midterm elections. And what happened 2 years after the highest anti-Republican turnout in midterm history happened? A rightward shift that the Biden people denied and said, oh, this ain't happening. It didn't happen. Bullshit, it didn't happen. It was an 8-point shift. This is when I was on the Lincoln Project trying to wake these guys the hell up and saying, you got a problem. You're losing Latino voters. And then in 2022, they stayed at that high level. Latinos were the only demographic that didn't backslide to the Democrats in what was a pretty good Democratic year that should not have been. Should have been a big red wave. Latinos are still like, they were walking down the battlefield with the Republican flag. They're like, we get it. We're not going anywhere. We're not voting for the Democrats. And then 2024 comes. I mean, I write a book telling the whole freaking world, this shit's coming. Wake up. And then the biggest shift in history comes. So after even that 2018 midterm, my point is the next 3 elections are this big red warning sign saying it's coming. Look at that, brother. Yeah, I got to get your signed copy. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. And I say that only because the Democrats are going to have a good year with Latinos. I don't know if it's going to be a great year. It's up to them. They haven't done a good job with it when they've got it all teed up for them. But just history and trend lines tell us it's going to be a good year. But look what happened after the last best year in history for them. 3 bad election cycles because they couldn't make the damn adjustment. There's no more room to keep losing these voters. We're at 48-51 according to Pew. And Pew's the gold standard, in my opinion.
Yeah. The Pew study, the Catalyst study both showed that. I think the other thing is that again you're gonna see the messaging is really gonna be, again, to your point. This is the point that I was making with tariffs and with immigration, is that, like, when you're on the docks in a place like the Port of Los Angeles, or you are
Brownsville, Texas, on the border.
Texas,
yeah,
you know, these places that deal with stuff coming across the border.
Yeah.
Chuck, this HEB, the grocery chain, 50% of its business is in Mexico. These are the people who are going to get the brunt of the tariffs. And then on top of that, if you have this kind of crackdown on immigration, immigration is an economic issue for a lot of Latinos. It determines whether you can put food on the table. It determines whether business owners, because a lot of Latinos are business owners, can hire enough staff or have some staff pay people under the table, quite frankly. It determines whether, if the tariffs are too much on copper or aluminum, that's going to determine how much you have for your pie tins.
Look at housing. Housing,
yes.
brother. Drywall comes from Mexico.
Yes.
You want to increase drywall by 40, 50% with a tariff? Where's our lumber coming from? It's coming from Canada.
It comes from Canada.
So, housing, like how they're not pounding the crap out of Trump on housing costs right now is just beyond me. How you're not in Valadeo's district just kicking the shit out of this guy, saying, where were you? You're supporting a taxes that are, what it is, it's a tax.
Yeah, tariffs are a tax.
It's Republican tax increase on housing. Beat the crap out of them.
All the while you have these taxes on the top, these tax cuts for the top. I'm going to sound like Theo Berner, the top 1% of the top 1%. And then you have a little bit of sugar with the no tax on tips, no tax on. Your Uncle Steve's gonna love that. And then on top of that, on top of that, you're gonna be paying more for your groceries. You're gonna be paying more for your rent and your mortgage because of the cost on drywall, the cost of lumber, and then on top of that, you see permanent military occupying forces in Latino communities to do these deportations because Stephen Miller's got a hard on ever since some Latino girl broke his heart in high school. It's good. You are seeing the dominoes fall in states. And look, it can even happen in a state like Texas if you have someone like Ken Paxton who wants to deport people yesterday. Because the nominee in Texas.
We're going to have a lot more to talk about, and this was really happy that we had Eric here. Next week, me and Mike are going to talk about, and Eric, we appreciate you coming on, brother. We appreciate your great reporting. If you're not following Eric, make sure you follow him at the Independent over there and all the work he's doing on Capitol Hill. And next week, me and Mike will get back in the groove of just me and him, hearing about all the things. We didn't have no time today, Mike. I wrote this down to talk about you and the Jeffrey Epstein tapes and figuring out if
I was not on the list. I was not on the list.
Right.
Can't prove it. There's no list anyway. It doesn't even exist.
There's no list. Yeah, no.
We haven't talked about it. We're not going to talk about it today because I think Mike Madrid's got the list. But anyway, Netanyahu giving a Nobel nomination to your boy over here. We didn't talk about the Netanyahus. But then on a really serious note, y'all, you're going to be listening to this on Friday. My great state of Texas has been through hell. I want to think about all the people down there, lots of Latinos, lots of folks down there in that valley who are just still digging out. Loss of life was crazy. It's going to be interesting to see that. I said this on CNN Tuesday morning. I said, I've walked all along those riverbanks, and that's a river bottom for those of you back there. It floods like that because lots of rivers come into that bottom, and it dries out in the used to hunt there right out of Kerrville and right out of Fredericksburg there. And it's been a lot of time there. My nephew lives just north of there. These communities are really hurting. If there's folks and organizations you can support down there, do everything you can to help out the folks in Texas. There's times when none of us need to be Democrats and none of us need to be Republicans. We just all need to be Americans. And this is a time where our folks in Texas, and now with flooding happening in New Mexico, I was on the phone with Gabe Vasquez this morning, and he said there's historic flooding going on in Ruidosa. There's flooding happening in North Carolina. We're going to see more and more of these weather catastrophes. So keep them loved ones close to you. Hug them up tight. Remember, as we always say, if you still got your mom and daddy with you, call them and give them all the love. And until next week, me and Mike Madrid will be back.